Welcome to the Engaging People Powering Companies podcast with your host, Amrit Sander. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with who we are, we're And Evolve, and we are employee engagement specialists focusing on culture development, employee engagement, and leadership and management development. The reason why I explain that with you now is because this week we've got a special broadcast. So, we've got a standard podcast that we run available on any good podcast providers, but we're also at the moment recording for YouTube. We've been given some feedback by colleagues to say, or people who listen to us and follow us to say, it would be great if you could do some YouTube videos for us of the podcast. So here we are. We've listened to you. Welcome for those of you who are now watching on YouTube, and welcome to those of you who are listening to us on your standard podcast provider. This week, I want to talk to you about time and urgency. Now, this is off the back of an event I went to last week. It was hosted by Ogilvy. It's their Nudge Stock Festival, held every year, behavioral science event. It's one that I go to. It's one that I go out of my way to go to, and it was very, very good. As always, I always take something away from it. And this week was particularly interesting. It really did focus your attention. The reason why is because the concept or the focus of the event was time, and how time is this one commodity we just don't get enough of. We will never have enough of. We never get anything done or anywhere near the things we want to get done. And yet we will have the same amount of time. Somehow it just eludes us. We can't pin it down. Well, it was actually brought into stark realization of how little time we have. So at the event, Oliver Burkeman was speaking. Now, Oliver Burkeman has written a book called 4,000 Weeks. Brace yourself. So he shared how if an average person was to survive till the age of 80, when we start to look at our lives, 80 sounds like a long time. For those of you who are out there, Gen Z, you're thinking 80 years, what, loads of time. And often, especially when you break it down into hours and days, you think that's a lot of hours and days. And then when we look at 80 years itself is an abstract number that you think that seems like a lot. I've got a long time to go. If we will break it down to months again, the number seems very big. But what Oliver has done is he's allowed us to think about our lives in a way that I think resonates most with people. And it's weeks. Often we start our working week on a Monday, thinking, I want to get this done, I want to get that done, a big to do list. And what happens is our to do list just bumps into the next day and the next day. And by Friday, you blink and you think, where's the week gone? I didn't get anything done that I wanted to get done. And so weeks is a way of, it's a format that most people will understand. How many weeks are passing by? I mean, look, we're in July. How has that happened? Right? We're midway through the year. In fact, the days are now going to start getting shorter. I hate to depress you. In fact, I'm going to depress you even more in a minute. But weeks, the concept of weeks, I think resonates really well with us. And so he's used this concept of weeks to help refocus our attention on the things that are really important to us. Now, when we look at our life from the perspective of weeks, he's worked out that it works out to just over 4,000 weeks for an average person to live the life of 80. That's how much time we have left. 4,000 weeks. It actually got even more morbid because there was a possibility of buying a calendar where you could tick off the number of weeks you have left. But anyway, I digress. Now, if you're at the age of around 50, that 4,000 suddenly becomes 1,500 or just over. If you're older than that, obviously less. That really does sound like a scary thought. When we start to think of our lives in the number of weeks, how many weeks I've got left. And the reason why this is important is because for those of you who've done any time management program, we teach time management in our leadership development programs. It's really important that leaders and managers focus on where they're spending their attention and focus on the time they have left. And so we focus on, we talk about really paying attention to the things we're doing that are urgent and important versus non-urgent, non-important. And it's the old Eisenhower matrix. If anybody's familiar with that, it's defining your tasks based on those four quadrants. Things that are urgent and important, things that are urgent, not important, things that are not important but urgent, and things that are not important and not urgent. And it's defining those tasks and where your time is being allocated. We shouldn't be spending all our time in urgent and important because that's just firefighting. And yet, so many of us find ourselves in that place, trying to get through a to do list of things that we want to get done, but we're just being hit left and right by things that are just urgent. This needs to be done, that needs to be done. And it takes up all of our time. Well, when we start to look at our time in terms of weeks left, it really does change everything. You start to think about how much time I have left. And the whole focus of what Oliver's trying to do is get us to think about the things that are important to us, not the things that are urgent. And it's the whole mere urgency effect, which is getting caught up in and thinking about that we're being productive by getting caught up in things that are urgent or perceived to be urgent, rather than things that are important to us. Now, I was once focused on, I was very, very ambitious when I was young. When I qualified as a pharmacist, I went into management fairly quickly. And I remember I was one of the youngest managers in the country for the company I was working with. And I wanted to prove myself. This was not about money at all. This was about demonstrating to the world the value I added. And so I was slogging my guts out. I was working so hard, 50, 60,000 miles on the road. I, times I wasn't eating. I wasn't looking after myself. Despite being a pharmacist, I was not looking after myself. And I paid the price. Very quickly, I ended up with a stomach ulcer because I wasn't eating. I was stressed. Acidity was building up, and it was eventually burning a hole in my stomach. It took me 6 months to take a step back and repair my body. But even then, I don't know if I learnt my lesson, if I was completely honest with you. It took more time and life to make me realize that I couldn't carry on like that. Not because I couldn't physically, I could. And the question is that what I wanted? And I think that's where I am now. You know, as a business owner, you can work 24/7. And I did. When I set the company up, I was working every hour I could. Weekends were just time to catch up on work, evenings the same. Where I'm at now is different. I am My weekends are sacred. They're for my family. My evenings, I try not to do any work if I can help it. But if I do it out of choice because it's something I want to do as opposed to I have to. It's not often a position that many of us find ourselves in because during the day, as I said, we're being bombarded left and right by things that are urgent to other people, or we get caught up in this contagion of urgency by management, senior leaders, whatever it might be, that we end up passing on to other people. Now, I have really slowed my life down, and people often think when you do this that it means you're no longer ambitious, you're no longer hungry for success, and you're just plodding through life. Actually, I disagree, and I think it's the opposite. I've slowed my life down now that I am focusing on the things that really matter to me and the things I want to achieve. I made a decision a while back that I don't want to be a multi-millionaire with all the life luxuries, the trappings that go with it. That's not me and that's not who I am. For me, my life, the journey is the destination. I really want to enjoy what I do. I want to get value from it. I want to get a kick out of it. I want to go to bed smiling at night thinking, I did a good job. I made a difference to someone's life. It's a decision I've made. And so, what that's meant is I have set up the company in a way that supports that. The work I do supports that. I could work 24 hours a day, and that would guarantee me a success of getting, the money that if that was my ambition. It's not. I've made a choice. And so I now look back on my life and think the things I'm doing now, they're the most important things to me. We don't often get to do that. We often get caught up in, looking left and looking right and seeing what other people have got, using them as a reference point of our success. Imagine going to a school reunion and finding that everybody's made much more money than you, or they've had a better lifestyle than you, whatever it might be. Up until that point, you were happy. And so we can get caught up in comparisons and comparing ourselves to people around us. relevant or irrelevant, it still ends up happening. That's a human frailty. That's not personal. That's just how human beings are. It happens to all of us, right? We all get caught with this, and it's probably the foundations of imposter syndrome and anything else. But going back to Oliver's talk, 4,000 weeks, or 1,500, or 1,000, or 500, wherever it may be, it really does make you think, where am I focusing my attention? And what are the things that are important to me that I would love to do? Now, let's say you're out there thinking, I would love to set up my own business one day. I would love to do that course one day. I would love to do a degree. I would love to do that job, whatever it may be. We keep putting things off to one day until the timing's right. And what happens is we get to a stage in our lives where we realize that day's never going to come. Either I do it today or I just don't do it. And many people end up following their passion and dreams tinged with regret. I wish I'd done it sooner. I hear that so many times, people saying to me, whether it's the best job you wanted to go for, over the security of staying in the position you were in, whatever it might be, I hear so many people saying to me, I wish I'd done it sooner. So this talk from Oliver Burkeman really made me think. I'm really pleased with my life. And I sat there, I was quite smug because I've made changes to my life. I am living the life I want to be living. I am loving it. I get to do real valuable work with people, and I get to work with clients who care as much as I do about the work we do. And I get to work with colleagues who care as much as I do about the work we do. But for those of you out there who are sat there feeling a bit of a lack of satisfaction from your lives, from your work, from your jobs, I would ask you to read this book, 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman, and calculate how many weeks you have. What are the things that are really important to your life that you're not getting a chance to do? I'm a huge believer in the power of three. What three things do you want to achieve or have or do that you've been putting off? And think about when you can start planning for them now. Think about when you can make them happen, and focus your attention there rather than getting caught up, like all of us do, with things that are urgent, but they're not important. They're not going to get us to where we want to be. And all they're doing is taking weeks away from us. They're delaying the inevitable of what we need to do. And there was this really sobering thought that we were left with, which is when we die, that to-do list is going to stay there. We're never going to get through it. So focus on the things that matter, as opposed to the things we're just never going to get done. So I thought it was interesting. This book, 4,000 Weeks, Oliver Burkeman. If you were to calculate how many weeks you have left, how does that change or reframe your life? How does that refocus your attention? And what does that mean in terms of what you're going to do? We often talk about personal values here. You know, we're advocates, huge fans of making sure leaders and managers are aware of their personal values, and are focused on things that really matter to them. Well, what matters to you? Not just on a list as an academic exercise, but if your time was being used up and you only had a little bit of time left, what really does matter to you? I'm going to leave you with that thought. Join us again for more thoughts on leadership development, culture development, employee engagement, employee experiences, and everything else in between. Amrit Sander from And Evolve on our podcast and our YouTube channel. I shall see you soon. Take care.